What's up, YouTube? My name is Arthur Robinson Jr. I'm the creator and host of PowerfulInterviews.com. And I'm a partner of NationalDiversified.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, successful businessman, a multi-millionaire. He is an injury lawyer. His name is Brian Kredo. Brian Kredo is the founder of his phenomenal law firm, which is called MMK Law Firm. In this interview, he breaks down layman's terms about how he specializes in workers' compensation claims, slip, trips, and fall accidents, malpractice lawsuits, criminal law, and much, much more. In this interview, Brian Kredo, he also breaks down layman's terms about never give up and never quit and much, much more. So remember, this is not BS information. The right information will change your current situation. Wealthy people, they take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people, they take advice from broke people. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes. In this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, successful businessman. He is a phenomenal injury lawyer. His name is Brian Kredo. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on. That way you be well informed when I publish more successful audio interviews. So, check it out. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Brian Kredo to the show.
Wow, thank you, Arthur. It's great to be with you today. I'm privileged and honored to be here on this podcast with you this afternoon.
Well, I thank you, Brian, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about your phenomenal brand, MMK Law Firm, and about the power of workman's compensation. I gladly appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm happy to help and give the good people out there some advice, both with regard to the legal business and workers' compensation and personal injury lawsuits, as well as some entrepreneurial advice, if I can help with that, in terms of being the owner of a law firm and getting started.
To everyone that's listening, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Brian Kredo is going to break down layman's terms about entrepreneurship and about workman compensation. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, that's correct.
What I'd like to know, can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Brian Kredo? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Wow, okay. Well, as you said, you described my educational background. Interestingly, I did not start out as a lawyer. When I went to Penn State University as a freshman, I had actually had the intention of becoming a doctor. I had started out in a major of pre-medicine, and it was my desire at that time and intention to become a doctor so that I could help people. In fact, a specialist in cardiology, because I had a grandmother who was often sick with heart problems growing up, and it made me want to be able to help people like her when I became a professional after school. But in going through school, I did have to take some political science, some history, and some law classes, and those classes really were what interested me most, and that interest, together with my desire to help people, made me switch gears and decide that I wanted to become a lawyer. And so I went to law school. I learned about the law, and sure enough, they say your first year of law school is the most reading. By the second year of law school, you kind of figure it out, and you figure out how to get things together and how to answer the questions. And by the third year of law school, then you become involved in the workforce and start working as an intern, and you really get some practical experience. And sure enough, that's that's pretty much the track that I took. I then worked after law school for a very large insurance defense firm in Philadelphia. In fact, when I joined that firm, we had 250 plus attorneys, and at that time I was defending people who were involved in lawsuits. So for instance, Arthur, if you had gotten in a car accident and someone sued you and alleged injuries, I would defend you because your insurance company would pay me to represent you in that case. And that's how I kind of learned the nuts and bolts of the practice. And I did that for about 4 years, and after realizing that I was among 250 other attorneys pretty much nationwide, and that this was someone else's law firm and I really wasn't going to be a principal in a law firm, I would be a partner, but it really wouldn't be an owner of the law firm since I was number 251 on the totem pole. I decided with two of my friends from law school that we were going to open up our own law firm. And we did that back in 1997, so we've been kicking it around here since then. And we've now, what we do is we actually represent the injured people. We represent the people who are injured in car accidents, trip and fall accidents, and, of course, workers who are injured while working. So I do get, although I'm not a doctor, I do get to cross-examine doctors for a living and ask them questions as part of my practice, and I also get to help people, which is, I think, what the most rewarding part of my job is. And that's pretty much what I do. Through the years, I've fought on behalf of my clients against very large corporations. I've walked into courtrooms and tried jury trials that lasted weeks against very large, well-known corporations in this country who had 3 or 4 attorneys on their side of the table against me and my client. And those, of course, are the most challenging situations, but also the most rewarding. And I've really enjoyed it along the way. And, I would say it's a very rewarding profession. I enjoy it. And most importantly, what we focus our practice on is developing personal relationships with our clients like you and I. In fact, that's how we met through the litigation practice. And I'm privileged and honored to say that many of my friends and professional conducts are a result of being former clients that I've represented in cases like these. I think that's pretty much a summary of my background. I can certainly address any other questions you have. I'd be happy to.
Can you explain to the listeners, Brian, what is the criteria of opening up your own law firm? And from your own experience, do doctors and lawyers pay the highest in taxes? Because I know the Internal Revenue Tax Code is a form of stimulus packages that's designed for real estate investors and active investors to pay less in taxes.
Yes, that's an excellent question. So let me answer the last question first in terms of the taxes. I can't really speak to doctors because I'm not a doctor and I don't know how their taxes work, other than that it would work in terms of their income just like anyone else. They would pay tax at their income tax rate. But in terms of lawyers and lawyers who specialize in personal injury like I do, the interesting thing is that a lot of clients aren't aware of, and a lot of people in our society aren't aware of, is that when you are represented by an attorney in a personal injury case, and that attorney fronts costs for you for your case, those costs are actually taxed by the IRS, so that if, for instance, you come to me and I have to spend $5,000 on your case in order to litigate it, while that $5,000 is out on the street because I've paid other entities, individuals, and corporations to litigate your case, though I've already paid taxes on those costs, even though I haven't seen any income from your case yet. So in that way, for instance, if we have 100 cases and each case has $2,000 worth of costs and we have $200,000 on the street, your attorney has to pay taxes on that $200,000, even though that money is not in his firm or in his or her pocket. So that does make it a little difficult for attorneys, and we do have a lot of taxes to pay. And so part of the problem when you start your own firm is how am I going to get this capital, this money to be able to pay the costs that I will incur once I get the clients that I need to get in order to have a successful firm. And so for a lot of people, that's a difficult hurdle in starting your own practice. In fact, that's one of the things that we had to deal with when we first started our practice back in 1997. Fortunately, once you're in business for 20 plus years, things do tend to catch up, and you're able to hopefully be able to have enough backing that you're able to afford the cost to run all of these cases, and therefore you don't have to rely on a line of credit or something like that some attorneys do have to rely upon at the beginning.
Wow. Now, me personally, I never take advice from quitters or pretenders, and I know that you immerse yourself into lifelong learning by building up your own law firm. Can you explain to the audience in your own powerful way, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
That's an excellent question. And in thinking about that, it's going to sound silly, but in my practice and as a lawyer, it's something that, I remember even as a child, my mom telling me, and it's very simple and very basic. But the saying is never give up. And as a lawyer, that phrase right there is something that I hold true to my heart, because there have been many times, Arthur, when I've walked into a courtroom and a judge, a jury, an arbitrator, an opponent, and even a client has told me that the odds are stacked against me. And if I had taken that, what they told me and taken it to the heart, I would have walked back out of the courtroom with my tail between my legs and would have lost the case. I remember one of my biggest jury verdicts, my opponent told me that my case was so weak that it was going to be bouncing around the courtroom like a pinball. And that we tried that case, and she also told me that she has never lost a case in 20 years of trying cases on behalf of her client. And at the end of that case, the jury returned a verdict, a very large verdict for my client, deservingly so. And it was a very gratifying feeling to be told that there was no chance that we were going to win and then to walk out successful. So I think the number one piece of advice is never give up. The minute you begin to have doubt in yourself or your case will be the minute that the other side sees that weakness and jumps on it. And so you just can't. You have to have faith in your heart that you're prepared and that you're going to move forward and that nothing's going to stop you. Sort of like a boat, a speedboat in the water. You just have to keep going and plowing ahead. And that's what we try and do here at MMK with our cases. It's very easy to get caught up in the nonsense, but you just have to stay focused on your goal, which is to get your client the best result possible as quickly as possible. And there are all kinds of obstacles in the way. Remember, in these types of cases, these personal injury cases, the plaintiff's attorneys, which are the attorneys that represent the injured people, they get paid on what's called a contingency fee. So we get a percentage of what we recover for our clients. On the other side of the fence, the defense attorneys, they get paid an hourly fee. So the corporation, the business, the client who's getting sued will hire their attorney and pay them an hourly fee of a certain amount per hour. So, of course, it's in the defense attorney's best interest to drag the case on as long as possible, because they'll make more money the more work they do and the longer the case goes on. Whereas on the plaintiff's side, my side, when I represent an injured client, they want the case over as soon as possible because they want to get their compensation so they can do with it as they please. And so we're at adverse ends, and we kind of have to plow the case forward, and the defense's job is to try and slow the case down. So from beginning to end, we're sort of, adverse to each other. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
From your own experience, I know that the lawyers and the judges, some lawyers and judges are good friends, and I know that you represent a lot of slip and trip and fall accidents in regards to your law firm and what you represent. Can you explain to the audience what is the role of workers' compensation? And this is a process that you had to go through in regards to workers' compensation, in regards to winning your case. But I know that workers' compensation just don't happen overnight and you don't win your case. Can you explain to the audience that process? And do people, when they're going through that process, do they have to develop thick skin in order to win their workers' compensation case?
That's another great question. Well, there's two great points there. First of all, with regard to being friends with lawyers and judges, and that is so true. Many of our judges are former lawyers. So a lot of us have had cases against the judges that we're in front of when we're litigating these cases. In other words, for instance, just this morning, I had a phone conference with a judge who I used to have cases against because he's a former defense attorney. And so it's very important, just like every relationship in life, Arthur, that we never burn our bridges. I always try and be as professional and as courteous to my opponent as I can, of course, in my mind maintaining the fact that I'm advocating for my client, but still maintain professional courtesy and respect for my opponent, because it's those opponents a lot of times that not only do you see them down the road in other cases, but also down the road in the future, they become judges sometimes, and you're appearing before them. So you never want to burn any bridges, and you always want to be as professional, courteous, and respectful as you can to your opponent. But to answer the second part of that question, dealing with workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is a specific niche or area of the law where it deals with people who are working and they get hurt while in the course and scope of their employment. So what that means is if someone, for instance, works at the local convenience store and they get hurt at the convenience store while they're working, they can't sue their employer for pain and suffering damages. The only thing they can get under the law in Pennsylvania, and most states, as a matter of fact, is wage loss benefits as a result of that injury for as long as they're disabled. And the employer would also have to pay for any medical bills that are related to the treatment for those injuries. Now, in terms of the compensation in Pennsylvania, what you get when you're an injured worker and you're unable to work is you get 2/3 of your average weekly wage tax-free for as long as you're disabled. So, for instance, if there's a local convenience store and an injured worker is there and they trip over the mat while they're walking into the store and they fracture their ankle and they're unable to work for several months, they will get paid 2/3 of their average weekly wage tax-free for as long as they're unable to work until the time when they return back to work. And the employer would also have to pay for any medical bills related to the treatment of that fractured ankle. The problem is, and you saw this coming when you asked the question, is that the injured worker, it makes it very difficult for the injured worker because it's difficult to be out of work and not have any income coming in while their attorney is trying to litigate the case and get them paid. And sometimes these cases can drag on for 6 to 8 months before a judge will make a decision in the case. And therefore, the injured worker has to sit at home, struggle to eat, let alone take care of themselves and their family, because they don't have any money coming in. And unfortunately, many of us have to live today from paycheck to paycheck, and it's difficult to do that when you don't have any paychecks coming in. So it's my job as an attorney to try and expedite the process and get the injured worker their money as soon as possible. In addition to that, the legislature and the laws in our Commonwealth here in Pennsylvania have made it very difficult for the injured worker, because one of the requirements is that the injured say, well, okay, you have a broken ankle, but you know what? I still think that you're able to work. Go back to work and sit down in the chair, and you can still sit there at work. They'll pay you, and that way the insurance company doesn't have to pay any workers' comp benefits. Wow. And that's what happens. In fact, I've had a case against a very well-known supermarket in our area, and I represented a lady who actually broke her leg while working at that supermarket. She was a stock woman, and she would stock the shelves, and she was doing that, and she fell off the ladder, and she broke her leg. And this very well-known large supermarket in our area brought her back to work and offered her light duty. Well, their form of light duty was to have this poor lady with a broken leg come back and sit in the back room and shine the fruit. She would have to sit there for hours upon hours, take the apples and shine them so that they could go in the case and look better. Wow. And you can figure this out, right? My client could only sit there for about 2 hours before she said, I have enough of this. I just can't sit here and shine the fruit anymore. That's right. And not only was it tedious to be doing that for 2 hours straight, but she's in pain. Her leg is throbbing. She's taking pain medication, so it's difficult for her to even, concentrate. And she's suffering because of the pain that she's in, let alone having to worry about getting ready for work, getting to work, sitting there on the chair and shining fruit all day. So the hope of the employer and its insurance company was to get her to quit. And as counsel, I kept trying to advise her not to quit, because if she quits, then they could say, oh, well, you walked off the job, and therefore we don't have to pay you. So there are all kinds of intricacies in the law, and that's why an injured worker needs to hire an attorney who specializes in this type of field. You wouldn't go to a Chinese restaurant and order Italian food, right? For the same reason, you wouldn't go to just any attorney and expect them to handle your workers' compensation case. You would have to go to an attorney who's experienced, who's been doing it for a long time, and who has a relationship with both the judges and the opponents, so that they can get this case taken care of for you as soon as possible, so that you can get compensated and not have to sit there and shine fruit all day. And that's what we pride ourselves here on at MMK. Like I said, we take every case personal. We handle every case personally, so that if you come to us, while you may speak with a paralegal, you certainly will be able to get your attorney on the phone, that being me or another one of my partners. And we're happy to speak with our clients. We're happy to counsel our clients. We're happy to meet with our clients so that we can explain to them some of the things that they should do and shouldn't do. That brings to mind another interesting thing that happens in these workers' compensation cases, and for good reason. Sometimes, unfortunately, there are people who say they're hurt, tell their attorney they're hurt, and they're really not hurt, and the attorney doesn't know that. And so what these insurance companies do, and the employers do, is sometimes they hire these surveillance companies, and the surveillance companies go out and they do some undercover surveillance work, and they videotape the client, the injured person, or the person who allegedly is injured, and they catch them doing all kinds of things that they shouldn't do. Like, for instance, sometimes people say they're hurt and they can't work, and yet they're at home shoveling the snow on a snowy day, or changing a tire in their driveway, or raking leaves, or even I've seen surveillance video of clients who allegedly are hurt and are out playing golf. And
wow.
The insurance company will follow them to the golf course and hide out in the tree and take a video of them playing golf and say, well, you can play golf, but you can't work. Wow. And the insurance company's right. Unfortunately, there is some of that fraud and people who just aren't being forthright. And that does happen. And so we do need to have these insurance companies and these employers do this surveillance, because we wouldn't want someone to take advantage of the system like that, because that just means that you and I and everyone else who are working hard have to pay for people who aren't working to try and take advantage of the system, and we certainly don't want that. But there are many times when people are really hurt, and the insurance company will hire these surveillance companies, and then the surveillance companies try and get videotape of the person and say, well, look at what they're doing. And you know what they're doing? Well, for instance, I had a client once that they followed around for 3 days. And you know what they found him doing? He went to the Wawa, he got a newspaper, he got a breakfast bar, he had it in a bag, and he was walking to his car. Well, we're not saying that my client can't go to the Wawa and get a newspaper and a breakfast bar and walk to his car, right? But he was in the construction industry hanging sheet metal walls on buildings. So there's a big difference between hanging sheet metal in construction and using your body as your tool all day long, and walking to the Wawa to get a newspaper and a breakfast bar. So that surveillance was not very effective, and the judge basically disregarded it and said that it wasn't even relevant and didn't affect his opinion in any way.
Wow.
So it's important, like I said, that the client have an attorney who's experienced in this industry, so that they can anticipate what the defense is going to do, prepare for it, and prepare their client so that they don't encounter any unexpected hurdles along the way in litigating the case.
This is an incredible interview, and I appreciate you coming on my show today, Brian.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's my pleasure, Arthur. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Brian, so it seems like to me that insurance companies, they are in business to do a lot of great for their customers, but when it comes to a lawsuit, they're not in business to actually pay out. And when it comes to law cases where people are actually suing these insurance companies, now I know back in the 90s and in the early 80s and in the late 80s, you get into an accident, you go to therapy, and, you get compensated, and that was that. But hasn't the legislation board went back to the insurance company and say, listen, we're paying out too much money. If it comes to a case, they either have to be with herniated discs or they have to be seriously hurt if we're going to actually compensate our customers for these law cases?
Yes, and for good reason. I mean, the individuals, as we spoke about before, should be, really injured in order to be compensated. Certainly, someone who's not injured should not be compensated by the insurance companies or anyone else for that matter. We're all in agreement with that. However, I do think that there's a great bit of propaganda that is put out there by the insurance companies, and I don't really see, while I see it's important that there shouldn't be any fraud or there shouldn't be people who are saying they're hurt when they're not. I totally agree with that. But what bothers me is that the way this propaganda is being presented is it's being told to the public that, we shouldn't have large verdicts for people who are injured, no matter how injured they are. There should be caps on verdicts, et cetera, and that the reason why our insurance rates rates are so high is because we have all of these cases. And so what the insurance companies did within the last 7 or 8 years or so is they've done an excellent job of eliminating the fraud, of eliminating the cases that were nonsense, of preventing people from, and rightly so, from bringing cases that weren't real or weren't true. And it's good that they did that. And I'm 100% in support of doing that. But I do have a curious question, Arthur. How much have you saved in insurance premiums since they've done that? Has your insurance gone down? Mine hasn't. And in fact, mine's going the opposite way. It's going up. And so while I think it's important and it's good that we're not allowing these ridiculous and not true cases to be presented anymore, I would like to see the effect of eliminating that from our system by giving the consumer a break with their insurance. It seems to me that these insurance companies are the ones who are making the money. I mean, our premiums are going up, no matter how much the legislature is changing the law. And there has to be, I think the only companies that are saving money or seeing the real benefit here are the insurance companies and not the consumer. I think some of that savings should be passed on to the consumer. And so I'd like to see a little bit more of that, or at least an explanation as to where we're saving money. My insurance, whether it be homeowners insurance, car insurance, business insurance, liability insurance, none of those have gone down. They've all just gone up through the roof, despite the fact that the legislature has changed the laws to discourage lawsuits and to cap certain lawsuits. So I do see, of course, the import of discouraging fraudulent lawsuits and discouraging people from bringing lawsuits that aren't legitimate, and I'm 100% in support of that. But I would like to see some savings to the consumer because of the changes that we've made in the laws to prevent such fraudulent lawsuits.
Now, I know that when people actually get injured, and when it comes to compensation with their particular case, it comes down to the type of insurance they have. They can have, full tort or full limited tort. Can you break that down in layman's terms so that the audience fully understand what is full tort and full limited tort?
Okay, Arthur, I got to tell you, you are hitting nails on the head here. This is a great interview. You're really asking some outstanding questions for your audience members, because these questions are extremely important. And this one you just asked might be one of the most important questions you could ask an attorney in the personal injury field. And let me explain it to you. The difference between limited tort and full tort is night and day. Okay, if someone has limited tort insurance, they pay less of an insurance premium for their car insurance. But what that means is that they cannot sue a negligent person and make a recovery unless they can prove that they had a serious injury. So when you open up the newspaper and you read that the mayor was just involved in a serious car accident and suffered serious injuries, what do you think? Well, normally you would think, well, the mayor must be scared and not certain whether he may even survive. There's a lot of thoughts that come to mind about what a serious injury is, but certainly it's very serious. And so when you have limited tort, in order that you had a serious injury. So that means if you have a whiplash injury, a sprain of your neck, or a sprain of your back, or a sprain of your ankle, and it's difficult for you to walk and you have to walk with crutches, or even as much as in some cases a fracture that heals quickly, those are someone injures you and causes those types of injuries. If you have limited tort, you can't make a recovery for pain and suffering. However, If you have full tort, if you elect full tort on your auto insurance policy, you can make a recovery against a person who's negligent and causes injury to you, no matter how serious your injury is. So that using those same examples, if you have a whiplash injury to your neck as a result of someone's negligence, or a back sprain, or a broken bone, or any type of injury, you can be compensated if you have full tort. And so the difference between full tort and limited tort is that significant. It's night and day. One allows you to sue no matter how serious your injuries are. That's full tort. And one doesn't allow you to sue if your injuries aren't serious, and that's limited tort. And here's the kicker, Arthur. Do you know what the difference is between full tort and limited tort in terms of the cost to the consumer? It would actually cost you maybe $1 to $2 extra a day to have full tort. So that means your insurance policy would probably cost you an extra $350 to $500 a year, $1 to $2 a day for you to have full tort versus limited tort. And the insurance company don't want to tell you that. And the reason why they don't want to tell you that is because they don't want to have people have full tort. Because if people have full tort, they can sue each other, and guess who ends up paying? The insurance company. So they don't want to tell the consumers to get full tort. In fact, they'll encourage you to get limited tort, and they'll tell you that you'll save money by getting limited tort. And you will, but you'll only save about $1 to $2 a day, and for that amount of money, you're giving up a tremendous benefit, and that is the right to sue for injuries that you sustain even if they're not serious. So I think it's worth it. I understand that everybody's in a different economic bracket, and that for some people, every dollar counts, and I certainly understand that. So in those situations, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But if there's one thing for you to change on your insurance policy, if there's one thing for you to make sure you have on your auto policy, it is that you have full tort, because it is a difference between night and day in terms of what you're able to sue for versus not if you have limited tort. The other thing I want to tell your audience that I think is important about insurance is a lot of times people have something called liability insurance on their auto policy. For instance, you could have $15,000, or you could have millions of dollars worth of liability insurance to protect you in case you cause an accident.
Right.
So let's say, Arthur, you have $15,000 worth of coverage, and you, unfortunately, because you're doing interviews all day and working so hard all day, you're tired at night. You accidentally get tired at the wheel. You're not paying attention, and you accidentally hit someone in the rear as you're driving home tonight, and that person sues you, and you only have $15,000 worth of coverage. Well, that person can only get $15,000 from your insurance company, and then they can go after you personally for the difference. Okay, if you have $100,000 worth of coverage, then that person could get $100,000 through your insurance company and then go after you for the difference if they are entitled to more damages than the coverage that you have. But you can also have something on your policy called uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And a lot of people don't know about this, and a lot of people don't have it. But what that coverage does is that protects you, Arthur, in case you're hit or injured by someone who doesn't have enough insurance or doesn't have any insurance. So let's say you're the driver who's driving home, and the person behind you at night is tired, and they don't pay attention, and they rear-end you. But unfortunately, they don't have any insurance. Well, then there's nothing you can really get from them unless they personally own something. You could sue them and not make a recovery because they don't have any insurance to protect them. But what you can have on your policy is something called uninsured motorist coverage, which provides you with insurance if the person behind you doesn't have insurance. Or you can have something on your policy called underinsured motorist coverage, which provides you with insurance in case the person behind you doesn't have enough insurance to compensate you for your injuries. So if they only have a $15,000 policy, but your case is worth $100,000, you could have insurance called underinsured motorist coverage insurance on your policy, which will provide the difference of $85,000 to you if your case is worth $100,000, and you can still get the $15,000 from the person behind you. So the reason why I bring that up is because your audience should know that it is important that they protect themselves as much as they protect others. So that if you have an insurance policy of a liability policy of $100,000 to protect others if you hit them, then you should also have $100,000 of underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage on your policy, so that it will protect you to the same extent that you're protecting others if the person who causes the accident doesn't have enough insurance. I hope that makes sense, but to sum it up, basically you should have as much uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage insurance on your policy as your liability coverage on your policy that you provide for others. So if you have $25,000 worth of liability coverage, you should also have $25,000 worth of underinsured motorist coverage on that same policy. You should protect yourself as much as you protect others. So I hope that addresses another area of the law. And also, of course, there's wage loss coverage that you can have on your policy to protect yourself. If, for instance, you're working and you're unable to work as a result of an injury that occurs in a motor vehicle accident, you wouldn't get workers' compensation for that unless you're in the course and scope of your employment. But you can get wage loss coverage from your auto carrier, from your auto insurance carrier, which would protect you if you're unable to work as a result of a car accident or some other injury involving a motor vehicle. And so it's important that you have wage loss coverage on that policy if you can afford it. And I think basically that covers it. You should definitely have full tort. You should definitely protect yourself as much as others, so you should have uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, and you should try and have some wage loss coverage on your policy as well. Every insurance policy, every auto policy in Pennsylvania automatically has a certain amount of medical coverage on it, so that if you're injured in a car accident, even though it's someone else's fault, the first order of priority is your own insurance. It's a minimum of $5,000 worth of coverage. So what that means is if you're hurt in a car accident, no matter whose fault it is, your insurance company pays for the first $5,000 worth of medical bills that are related to that accident. So that's something else that people don't usually know, that they have that medical coverage under their insurance. So if they're not in a position to have health insurance, but they're involved in a car accident, they would have coverage under their automobile policy to provide for the medical treatment that they need as a result of that auto accident, even if they don't have private health coverage outside of the auto coverage.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
So there's a lot of information out there, and again, that's why it's important that if you are in an auto accident, or you are injured at work, or you are injured in a trip or slip and fall accident, you contact an experienced attorney and law firm that deals with this all the time, every day, so that they can help you and give you the best information and make sure you're getting the best medical care. That's the other important thing. It's very important that people, when they're injured, that they get the best medical care. A lot of times we find when people are represented by other law firms that they're just sent to doctors and medical facilities who are in the business just to work up bills and not really appropriately treat the injured person. It's important that you get to a doctor who really looks out for you, someone who's going to send you out for the MRI, someone who's going to send you for an X-ray to make sure that what they're treating you for is what you really have. You know, sometimes these things go misdiagnosed or non-diagnosed. Sometimes people have herniated discs. They have this horrible pain in their neck, and it sometimes presents as what we call radiculopathy, which is radicular pain going down an arm or a leg. And it's important, you know, an X-ray can't show that, but an MRI can. So it's important that your doctor order an MRI, not just X-rays. X-rays show fractured bones. They don't show herniated discs. They don't show pressure on the nerve root. And that's what's causing that radicular pain down someone's arm and down someone's leg a lot of times, is the disc pressing on the nerve root. An MRI will show that, and X-ray won't. And the reason why a lot of times doctors don't order the MRIs is because they cost more money. And, the insurance companies don't want to pay for that. They'd rather just pay for the X-ray because it's cheaper. But the X-ray is not going to show everything. So you need to get to an experienced lawyer who's going to work with experienced doctors, who's going to look out for the injured person and make sure they get the tests they need to get properly diagnosed so that they can get the treatment that they need and get better. I mean, that is the goal. It is the goal. And fortunately, most of the time, people that are involved in these accidents do get better if they get the right treatment. And medicine today is so advanced, Arthur, as you know, that these doctors and medicine, is just amazing what they can do. Just from a personal standpoint, I had an L4-5 herniated disc. I didn't get it in an accident. I got it moving a wooden dresser. But my doctor went in. I tried some what they call epidural steroid injections, which are injections where they administer some steroid through an epidural in your back. And unfortunately, they didn't do the trick. The doctor went in, put a small incision in my back, went in, removed that part of the disc that was herniated, and I got my life back. And there is hope out there for people in your audience who do have herniated discs and problems. They just have to get to the right medical provider and get the right treatment.
Now, you basically had a doctor that specialized in back injuries, and that's great that you fully recovered from your minor surgery. Now, I know that prescription drugs and non-prescription drugs, they're the major causes of diseases, and I know that all doctors and all lawyers ain't created equal. Can you explain to the audience, when it comes to hiring an attorney in regards to a car accident or workers' compensation, they should basically get with an experienced attorney that basically is going to fight for them and also is going to have their best interests at heart?
Absolutely, Arthur. That's of course. There are two things that I would recommend that your audience look for when they hire an attorney. Number one, that attorney has to be experienced, right? Because the more you do things, the better you are at them. Despite what Allen Iverson says, and Allen Iverson is a world-class athlete, so maybe he doesn't need as much practice as some of us do. But in the law and in medicine, practice doesn't make perfect, because no one's perfect, but it gets you as close to perfect as you can get, right? The more you practice, the better you are. And so same thing in the law. The more experienced your attorney is, the better they're going to be at that which you hire them for. So certainly experience counts and experience matters, and you should hire an attorney who's experienced in the area, in the field that you're hiring them for. So if I'm a real estate attorney, you're not going to hire me and expect me to do a good job in your personal injury lawsuit. And vice versa. If I'm a personal injury lawyer, you're not going to hire me and expect me to be able to do a good job in your real estate transaction case. Correct?
That's correct.
So that makes logical sense. The attorney must be experienced. But the second area that I think is really important that you touched on, but a lot of people don't realize, is that you need to meet with your attorney before you hire them and make sure that you feel comfortable with them as a person. Because this is someone that you're going to be dealing with for at least the next 2 to 3 years in most cases, perhaps even longer than that, perhaps 5 years, and you need to feel comfortable with them. If that attorney can't address your questions properly, if you don't have a good rapport with them, if you don't trust them, then that's not someone that you should hire. This is someone that you're going to have to feel comfortable being able to pick up the phone and speak with them, ask them any question, no matter how stupid, and have them give you an answer that you feel comfortable with. Your attorney is your counselor. They're your teacher. They're your advisor. They're your educator, your coach. And guess what? I've learned as much from my clients a lot of times as I've taught them, not necessarily in how to litigate a case, but in life's lessons. And so, it's a mutually beneficial relationship that you establish with your attorney. And it's something that you need to feel really comfortable with. Do you know that there are lawyers like me that I know that they don't even meet with the client when they sign the case up?
Wow.
They'll hire an investigator that'll go out and meet with the client and sign the case up, and the client will never even see the attorney. And how can you hire someone if you never meet with them? I mean, if you don't know what they're like, if you don't see if they can look you in the eye, if you can have a personal rapport with that person, And by the way, if they're not going to do that, to take the time to meet with you, what makes you think that they're going to take the time to litigate your case the way it should be litigated? What makes you think that they're going to be prepared when they walk into court and face the judge and their opponent and have to fight for you? And if you don't meet them and they don't have a personal rapport with you, a personal relationship with you, how hard are they going to fight for you? You have to want something in order to win, and you have to want something badly in order to fight and win. And so it's important that your attorney have a personal relationship with you, and you have a personal relationship with them. The cases that I've gotten the largest verdicts in my career over the last 25 years have been the cases where I have a personal connection with my client. And in fact, I feel as though I have a personal relationship with all of my clients. I pride myself on that. I think that's important. I need to get to know that client because I want the judge and the jury to know that client just like I know them. I want to be proud of that client. No one is perfect, none of us. So it's okay that there's been a history in the past. Some people have done some things that they're remorseful for or whatever it is. But you know what? Life's about learning and about recovering and about making tomorrow a better day than yesterday. And so I'm proud to walk in the court with a client who I've known for quite some time and be able to tell the judge about that history and things about the client that I know because of the relationship I have with them versus other attorneys who may not know that client. I've had situations where I've seen attorneys walk into arbitration rooms and yell their client names out, for the arbitration and not even know who they are, not even know what they look like.
Wow.
And similarly, the client doesn't know what the attorney looks like. So they have to find each other, meet each other for the first time at an arbitration room or a court hearing. That's ridiculous. There's no way that the attorney can be prepared because they don't know you personally. It's important that they have an understanding of who you are personally. And in a lot of these cases, Arthur, that's how I formulate my closing argument to the judge or the jury. I come up with a theme based on that person. And so if a person is very seriously injured in an accident, maybe their life is quite different than it used to be. But I need to know how their life used to be in order to be able to communicate that to a jury. If someone used to go to Virginia every year because they had a family reunion and they're not able to do that anymore, I want to know about what that family reunion was like, what they experienced when they used to be able to do it, and how meaningful it is to them now that they're not able to do that anymore because they were, unfortunately, they are now blind as a result of someone else's negligence, and they can't drive like they used to. And I want to know what they're missing out on in life. So I want to know what it was they did in the past. It's very important that you have a personal relationship with your attorney. So those are the two areas. Number one, experience. Number two, someone that you can have a trustworthy and beneficial personal relationship with. In today's world, we're all busy, so it's difficult sometimes to get to really know, your attorney. But you should make the effort to do that. It's really important to you. It should be important to your attorney, and it's really important to the case.
So it's good to build rapport and build a relationship with your client, and the client build a relationship with their attorney that they are hiring, because from a lawyer standpoint, your clients is the lifeblood to your business. If you can create a cosmic bond with them and create value for them, that way they will refer you to other people and say, listen, you need to go with Brian Kredo because he truly has your best interest at heart if you hire him to be your accident lawyer.
Exactly. And in fact, the greatest compliment you can receive as an attorney is to get a referral from an existing client of a new client. I'm lucky enough that fortunately we don't really do much advertising. And the reason why we don't is because we pride ourselves on getting our business from existing clients. And that's because they have faith in us and they refer their friends and their family to us. And that's how we've survived, and we're thankful for that. And the reason that is because we do have these personal relationships with our clients. It's not just the client; it's their spouse or their loved one, their family, their children, their parents, their close friends, and it's a privilege and an honor to be able to not only represent the client, but for them to bring a family member or a friend in because they trust us and they like the job that we did for them. There's no greater honor than a referral like that, and that's how we've built our firm from the bottom up. The concrete, the foundation are the relationships. That's how you build. Bringing us back to how we started this conversation today, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, the way you build a business, whether it be a law firm or an entertainment business or any business, is from your relationships and from building from the foundation up. And unless you have solid relationships at the bottom, the house is going to crumble if it's not solid at the bottom. So from the beginning, we've tried to focus on having personal relationships with our clients because it's very important in building your firm or any business for that matter.
That is absolutely true, because business is basically legalized hustle.
Bingo. I love that. That's so true. That is so true. And it's human nature, I think, sometimes to get a little lazy in some things, but you just can't let yourself do that. The minute you get lazy, the minute you stop hustling, well, the next person in line is out there hustling and not lazy, and they're going to get the next case or the next business opportunity. So you just can't, you can't let go. You got to keep plowing ahead. And
true.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but if you do it right, it's worth it.
Right.
It's funny because a few months ago I was extremely swamped between some new cases that were coming in and some cases that I was working on. Some cases were coming up for jury trial, and I just couldn't breathe. I was here till from 7:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I just can't take this. I'm just so stressed out, and it's just hard to focus, and it was just a lot of work at that time. And I said, I wish I had a few less cases. I wish the phone was ringing a little less so that I could get some time to catch up on some of the work that I have to catch up on. And sure enough, about 3 weeks after that, the phone stopped ringing a little bit. We see that sometimes in the summer. People are away. There's not as much action. There's not as many cases coming in sometimes. And I started to panic because the phone wasn't ringing. And I realized at that time, I'd rather be stressed and busy than stressed because I'm not busy. So you're right. You got to hustle, and make sure that you get the clients, that you get the work, and that you take care of your existing clients and existing work. It's tough. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's
definitely worth it. You're definitely going to see and experience a whole lot of joy when you get on the other side of that rainbow.
That's right. You're right about that. And look, it's a long hurdle, right? It's a long rainbow to climb. But you have to stick with it. You have to keep plowing ahead, because, like I said, the minute that you stop doing that, there's someone else right behind you who's going to move ahead, right? And that's in everything in life. That's everything in life, right? That's just how it works. From the time you're a youngster until the time you're retired. You start to learn that when you're young. It's the people who learn that the quickest and stick to it who are the most successful. Like you, Arthur, like you. And it's important. It's an important life lesson.
I appreciate it. And one thing I know, wealthy people, they never retire. They just keep building brands. And then earlier you talked about surveillance companies where these insurance companies hire people to see are they really hurt. Can you explain to the audience in layman's terms, what are the penalties when these insurance companies hire surveillance companies and they basically have people on tape where they're not hurt? What are the severe penalties that people can actually face up to if they get caught with these surveillance companies? And also, an arbitrator, what is the arbitrator's role in an accident case?
Okay, two excellent questions. Let me break that down into two answers. First of all, with surveillance companies and what can happen to an individual if they're caught, not being forthright or faking injuries. That individual, if they're faking injuries and not being forthright, that's insurance fraud, and that's a very serious felony. I mean, that can be prosecuted by the insurance company, and that individual would face fines and incarceration because they're breaking the law. So no one should fake an accident case. They will get caught and they will get prosecuted. And so it's very important that people not bring.